Hey there, I'm Will Allred. I'm one of the founders at Lavender. We're a real time email writing assistant. We help salespeople write better emails faster. One of the things that I had to prep for the show is a piece of advice that's been extremely helpful for me. And mine would be to learn before you earn. That was some advice I got in my early 20s and has been super impactful for me.
Awesome. So Will, who gave that to you? Was it a professor, an early mentor, a boss? Who gave you that, man?
It was someone who I was interviewing with for a job. Worked in a healthcare company in Atlanta, and over lunch gave me some advice about what to do in my 20s versus what to do in my 30s. And he said, listen, for your 20s, just focus on learning as much as you can because it'll pay off dividends in the long run.
Ooh, I like that. I think that's true too, right? Too often, as you know, as people were forced, like, hey, well, you got to do this or you got to have a plan. But if you learn, right, and I would include like getting connected to the right people to learn from. That's
Sure.
really going to serve you, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think part of it is who you know, making those connections and trying to learn from them, but also, in today's day and age, like where everyone's posting on LinkedIn and, every founder is, now got a part-time job as a full-time remote writer. I think there's a ton out there and a ton that we could learn from. I'm kind of jealous that I don't get to start my career right now.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. Yeah, it used to be a lot harder to find the right people, find the right information. But now I would say there's more noise, right? I mean, I think that's one of the cool things now is that if we're better, we can cut through the noise, maybe, and sometimes we're not. So, what are you finding with good emails? Right? We talked a little bit about that off camera here, but talk to me about good emails and why good maybe isn't good enough.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that we don't think about when we think about what a good email is the person on the other end. So when we're writing an email, we're typically in our own head thinking about, okay, how's this person going to read this line here? Are they going to tie between like point A and point B? And you are missing the entire point, which is their inbox is like deluged with 700 other messages where people are trying to be super comprehensive and get into like making sure everybody knows everything. And it's why I focused on pretty much every piece of content I've put out in the last year is focused around this notion of inbox triage, which is how the reader is going through their inbox. The average reading time is about 11 seconds now. And so if you've got 11 seconds to get your point across, all of a sudden you start realizing that they're not reading for comprehension; they're reading for categorization. Um, yeah, the thing with that is like, okay, how do I get my point across in a way that meets them where they are? And so the best emails are short. We're finding it typically takes under 30 seconds to read, but the best ones are under 15. And then, stupid simple. 70% of emails that go out the door are written at or beyond a 10th grade reading level. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, like, well, I'm a college graduate. Of course, I can read at a 10th grade reading level. But when you're talking about a 11-second window in which they're reading your message, you actually want to simplify that further. And that means writing at a fifth grade reading level. We found that statistically, if you take it from a 10th grade to a fifth grade, you'll get 31% more positive replies. And so, what does that actually mean? How do you do that? It means taking the sentences that have commas and just removing the commas. It's short, choppy sentences. It's words that are very common. It's words that are shorter. So, like a good example would be leverage or utilize. The obvious simplification of that is the word use, right? And you can just start chopping syllables out of your writing. And if you do that enough times, you'll actually simplify your message down to something that someone actually wants to read.
Wow. Wow. So you let's unpack that, man. So
Sure.
11 seconds is the
Yeah.
average reading time. So that's crazy. That's super duper short. And we read for categorization, not comprehension. So tell me, what does that mean, Will? What do you mean by categorization, not
Yeah.
comprehension?
So it actually comes back to the first 3 seconds of when you're reading an email. So we find that there's this big drop off in the first 3 seconds where someone's basically deciding, am I going to read this or I'm going to delete this? And so what that means is like formatting and a basic like look at like, what is this? It's almost that like WTF moment where you land in someone's inbox and they're like, what is this interruption? And how can I quickly get to whatever this is? Right. And so they are looking at it to try to figure out what it is so they can figure out what to do with it. Because if you think about what an inbox is, it's essentially a to-do list, right? It's a glorified communication channel, but like it's a to-do list where I'm looking for the names I recognize. I'm looking for a message from you, Phil. I'm looking for threads that I recognize. I've got, clients that I'm onboarding and, vendors that I'm managing. And then there's everything else, right? And so what can I do to make that process as easy on the other person as possible? Um, you know, the things that you don't want to do are things like asking for time, starting your email with hope this finds you well, having some long drawn out pitch about yourself, because I'm immediately going to start categorizing this as, oh, this is yet another sales message. It could be a great sales message. It could be a great pitch. But the problem is like you've gotten lumped in with every other bad sales email they've ever gotten. And so now the way that they're reading your email is not like from a lens of, okay, let me try to understand and like dig deeper. It's from a lens of, oh, this is a sales message. Do I need X product? Yes or no? And so you find yourself getting nixed before they've even actually taken the time to read what you've had to write.
Wow. So, hope you're well. Hope everything's good. Hope it's a good day. So how do we start then? Will, I mean, do we still use their name even? Give me the start of a good message.
Yeah, so the start of a good message is my go-to is Phil saw the following thing about you. Based on the following thing, I imagine you're dealing with the following challenge, right? So it might be Phil saw your recent podcast with Will Allred. Really cool setup y'all have on StreamYard. Curious though, is it? I don't know if there's like some problem with StreamYard because it's the first time I've actually been on here, but yeah, basically like if I'm selling you a podcasting software, I might try to find a differentiator and bring that up. But that's how I'd start a message is something that clearly showcases to you, hey, Phil, I've actually written a note that's specifically for you. Because as soon as I think, okay, this is yet another template that's landing in my inbox, your chances of having success just basically boil down to timing. So, if you reach out to me about SOC 2 compliance, which is basically just a security protocol, and I'm not looking for SOC 2 compliance, like the chances of me being like interested in your template are pretty low. Whereas, if you're talking to me about, hey, notice the following thing about you, like I'm much more likely to open it and have a conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so notice something, be specific, then make a connection to what you think a problem or challenge might be.
Yeah.
That's simple enough, right?
Basically tie an observation to a potential challenge that they're dealing with or a potential status quo that they probably have within their business. And if it's a status quo, make sure it's like something relatable.
Wow. Okay. Got that. So understand the comprehension that's not happening. Understand we're looking for categorization. Understand how to tie that up. And then you said short, stupid, simple. Right at a fifth grade level, and you get 31% more positive replies. So you with that, taking sentences that have commas, remove commas, use shorter words, really good. So what else, Will? What else is it about this kind of common language? Why does it even resonate so much? I mean, don't people want us to treat them like they're super smart?
Yes, but there's also this respect for time that they're not necessarily calculating into that. Like, of course, they don't want you to like dumb it down for them because they're stupid, but they're dealing with a deluge of emails within their inbox. And so You think about like um, how to meet them where they are, you've got to simplify it down in order for them to actually absorb the message. The classic example of this is you could write a really short email, but you could drop like four features in a row, and I could read through that and I would have no idea what you actually do. And so I always, given the holidays are here, it's like kind of an easy analogy, which is like, okay, you're going to Thanksgiving and you've got to explain to your grandma what it is that you do for work every day. Right? You're not going to like feature dump on your grandma, right? You're not going to be like, well, we've got this great email AI writer that writes emails for you. We've got, this recipient research, blah, blah, blah. We've got, this writing assistant that's going to make sure that every little blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to dive into every aspect of the product. I'm just going to say we help sellers write better emails faster. Like it's the simple version of what you want to say. And it's like, how do I explain that to a niece or a nephew in a way that they're not going to be like, what are you talking about? Right? It's like cringe test. But yeah, the grandma is probably the most timely.
Yeah. Well, that's so simple. I mean, when you put it that way, obviously I wouldn't feature dump on grandma, and by that, right? Why do we feature dump on anyone, right?
Yeah,
Why do we do that? Because frankly, they don't care. Let's just be quite honest. They don't care about our features. They care about solving their problems, right?
absolutely. I think there was somebody posted the other day on LinkedIn that what is it? It's like subpar reps talk about features, average reps talk about benefits, good reps talk about problems. Um, I think back to like, there's all these like little data points out there, like don't use bullet points in your email. Well, the reason people say don't use bullet points in your email is because, well, typically bullet points are you listing out your features, right? But we've got an email that we use in one of our cadences that's two bullet points, and it's basically you're probably dealing with problem one or problem two. That email has zero personalization to it, and it gets a 10% response rate. So I think that's baloney, right? It's what you're actually talking about. It's the fact that, typically when you're using a bullet point, it's to talk about the stuff that you do and all these different things. But in reality, what they care about is their problems. And so if you're like, hey, are you dealing with problem one or problem two? I hear this from most SDR leaders. They're like, yeah, I am dealing with that.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got something that helps.
Yeah. That makes so much sense, and so simple and yet so powerful. Problem one, problem two, not 10 problems, right? Not trying to list it out, but just a
No,
couple
actually,
there.
yeah, I usually tell folks to simplify it down. It's like if you're looking at, trying to list out their competitors or something, and you start listing more than two, the likelihood that you've lost your relevance is like out the door. Or, um, say you're listing out like a number of case studies. Like we've worked with such and such, such and such, and such and such. Just simplify it. Go with one, maybe two. There's no reason you need to just like drown them in numbers of people. Okay? It's like, we'll save you X percent, X ROI, blah, blah, blah. No one's actually like remembering whatever stat you threw out there.
Yeah. Good. Good. No, that's great, and that's encouraging because often, we think we have to impress people. If 57.6% of people found that this was helpful, when in reality, to your point, right? I think if it solves a problem for someone like me, that's probably a much better fit for an email. And maybe if you need to, right, you can always follow up on the phone or via Zoom or whatever. Is that what you're seeing, Will?
Well, I think it's more about simplifying it down so they can quickly grasp the concept. As soon as you start adding more, you're inhibiting your chances of them comprehending what it is that you're reaching out about, right? Your point was to make credibility, right? So you did it with one. You don't necessarily need to do it with seven, right? Or your point was to showcase that you get it. Well, you don't need to list out 14 different problems to showcase that you get it. Just hit on the top two.
Yeah. Good. Good. So with that though, you mentioned sales cadences, something near and dear to my heart here. So one of the things that that I'm finding when I'm doing a sales cadence and I'm working on that is we have to kind of change the channel, but email is still important. So what are you finding as it relates to to email cadence versus phone cadence versus social?
Yeah. So as long as LinkedIn doesn't have a tie-in to your CRM, because let's be honest, most people don't want to message within the Sales Navigator setup because it's oddly segmented from actually LinkedIn. Your email is going to be the logistical backbone of every deal. And so it should be the backbone of all of your cadences. Um, you know, when folks try to, get me into this trap of like, well, cold email versus, cold call, LinkedIn versus email, different tactics along the way. I'm like, you should use all of them, right? If you're just using email, you're leaving money on the table because not everybody prefers to be reached out to strictly through email. Some people actually prefer phone call. Crazy. But it also showcases to the other person that you're a person on the other end. So it's really easy for you to automate a sequence out of an email machine, right? And that's the only way that they ever hear from you, and it just continues to hit. But if you leave a voicemail, if you drop a voice message via LinkedIn Messenger, drop them a video, you're starting to add extra pieces of context to the fact that you are a full-fleshed human being on the other end, which creates reciprocity, but it also just reminds them in another way that they should respond back to the email or respond there in the channel that they prefer.
Yeah. So that's good, and I've not heard that a great explanation about why we do all those things. So the fact to humanize us and then remind people that there's a human there is really a smart idea, right? You mentioned email, phone, LinkedIn message, video, and then a LinkedIn voice message. Good stuff there. But email being a backbone of that. And when you use a cadence, don't just send the template, right? Customize it up, make it all about them, and use I would say use the sequence to remind you of what to do more than it is to say exactly what you want to say. Would you agree with that, or what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very anti-template. I think the notion of a template, as soon as you get one, you've gotten one, and they're not fun to get. They're kind of terrible. So SalesLoft actually did some really cool research around personalization percentage and what it does for response rates. So just taking a template and personalizing it 20%, regardless of where you're at in the cadence. I think the lowest improvement on response rate was 50%. It's that's ridiculous. So I went from, say I had 4% response rate on my email and I started personalizing. That would take you up to a 6% reply rate, which you think about what that does down funnel. What we've seen is when you start personalizing your emails and actually showing up with a real reason for why you're reaching out, it actually has a magnitude effect down the funnel. We just finished up a case study with a group in e-commerce, LucidWorks. And they basically implemented with our product. They're like, we're only going to send A emails. They saw a 40% increase in response rate, 2 times the meetings booked, 3 times the qualified pipeline. So it starts to magnify down the line because you're actually setting up a relationship as a seller at the start of that conversation.
Wow. So how we start is super important, and how we make that first outreach or that first touch or that first connection is super important. So you talk about personalization though. So how do we do that at scale, Will? How do we personalize at scale, man?
So it's always a good question. There's several ways that you can go about personalizing at scale. One of the places I would start is actually segmenting your prospect list. So if you follow Morgan Ingram will lay home on the notion that you're not getting enough out of your LinkedIn Sales Navigator. he's completely right, because you could take a prospect list of 100 and build out 4 different campaigns that you actually could send the exact same email to each within that 4 campaign series, and it'll feel like it was personalized because, um, say you use more than one variable. So like, it's a list of sales VPs. Great. Well, take the list a step further and segment it by the size of the company, segment it by how long they've been in the role, segment it by the city that they're in, and segment it by the growth rate of the organization that they're in. Like, all of a sudden now I've got like 4 different variables that I could start to tie into that email. And say it's sales VPs that have been on the job for less than 6 months, and the team's growing over 100%, and they are in New York City. I don't know if I mentioned that part. So like, they're in New York City. Like, okay, I could send to a list of like 60 people out of a LinkedIn Sales Navigator list, basically the same message, but it'll feel like it's one-to-one because I've built out uh, I've built out my outreach to really speak to multiple variables, and that's honestly the reason that I'd reach out anyways.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff there. Segmentation is so important and so seldom done. We think everybody has the same problems or the same characteristics, and they don't, right? If I'm going to talk to Will, I should use Will's name, not "Hey dude," right? I should, if I've got 100 people there. So I
Well,
think that's,
it's also a little bit more so like the minute sections within the writing. So we always think like, okay, when we're trying to personalize, we need to like really dig in and like call everything out very specifically. But a lot of the times, like, some of the best personalization is like kind of subtle. Um, like, I was in an intercom chat with one of our users today, and I knew he had posted on LinkedIn a few days prior, like a quote around like "bear with me," but he spelled it like bear and used a little bear emoji. And so I included that in my message back to him, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, bear with me here." And he was like, "Holy cow! Like, the level of personalization is next level." And I was like, "Yeah, it's just a subtle little nod back to something that he had done that I had seen." But you can easily do that with, say, you're picking up on the fact that their growth rate is, over 100%. It's like, okay, as someone, you know, as someone onboarding while trying to onboard yourself, and then just like keep the message going, right? I didn't have to call out like, given you've been in the role under 6 weeks and you're currently growing the team at a fast clip, it's just simplifying it down into how you would actually have a conversation with another person.
okay. Cool. That, yeah, man, that's just encouraging words, right? I think that's for a lot of folks. We hear personalization at scale, we have no idea how to do it. You gave us a great framework there that we can do, that it doesn't have to be super direct, but because you've been on the job 4 months and 17 days, right? I
Yeah.
mean, to your point, right? I think that's super powerful on that. So with that, well, you've got this great guide that you guys put together. Hope this guide finds you well. A comprehensive guide to better email. So you stop
Yeah.
saying that ish, right? Which is really good. Like, you've got a lot of fun sections in there. I'm a big fan. I've got it bookmarked, right? It's really good. Let's talk about the clear ask here, which I think is something that a lot of people fumble with, right? The clear ask. And the ask often is, yeah, can I have 15 minutes of time? Can I have 20 minutes of time?
Right.
Tell me a better ask. How do I say that better? How do I ask better so that I actually get what I want?
Well, I think the go-to has been, and this was really largely based off of some Gong research, where they figured out the interest-based CTA was much more effective in cold outreach. And then, once you've gotten their interest and they say, yes, this sounds cool, flipping that and moving towards a direct ask for a specific time. So that's been like the gold standard. And I think it's a great gold standard to go by. The only problem with it is, okay, if you use a CTA, like, think this is worth a chat, does this sound interesting? you're almost like setting up the message above to be some long drawn out pitch. And so the thing I worry about when we tell reps like to use an interest based CTA is it doesn't encourage the full email to be better. And so one of the things that we talk about is like a call to conversation. And so yes, an interest based CTA can be a fantastic call to conversation, but using a question that takes it a step further and asks something like, you know, given the original reason that I reached out, is this something that's a priority? It's still a yes or no question, but you're stating it in a way that's a little bit, it ties back to the further context of why you've reached out.
Yeah, the context is so important. I think that's a great reminder to us to ask, go deeper, and that call to conversation is. I like that turn of a phrase. Super good. There makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
The other piece that I'd call out, sorry to cut you off, is
Nope.
you know, just simplify the email down to a single idea, right? A single reason for reaching out. I think that's one of the keys to making your email clear, like one idea per email. And you could even boil that down even further. Like each paragraph has a single idea to it, each sentence has a single idea to it. But if you take it down to one specific reason that you're reaching out, which is like, I don't know, I saw this, thusly I thought you might have this problem. We help with, the following thing. Um, if you start talking about two different reasons for why they could be having a conversation with you, three different reasons, multiple different reasons, you start to muddy the water and you start to reduce that clarity.
Yeah, for sure, and the reducing clarity, right? Like a confused mind doesn't buy, they don't book, they don't even respond a lot of times because they're like, ooh, this is a lot of work here. I don't want that. Which gets back to your idea of simplification, which I really like and think is super duper strong on that. So with that, Will, let's talk a little bit about Lavender because it's a cool software, man. I've been checking it out the last week, writing some emails with it. I think it's got some cool stuff. But tell me, why did you guys even create this, man? Why is this software so important? Because I think it is, but I want to hear from you.
We at the time when we first came up with it, we were building a marketing technology product. So we had been building a marketing segmentation product for direct consumer brands, automotive, and COVID rolled around and basically took our pipeline and flushed it. And so we were looking at what was going on at the start of COVID, and we had a ton of people having to communicate more digitally than they ever had before. And they weren't really necessarily sure how to do it well. And so we saw some interesting trends over the first few months when that kicked off. And one of them was people were sending a lot of emails. I think the latest HubSpot data shows that people were sending like 120% more email. And so reps' days were shifting from 80-20, 80% phone, 20% email to 80% email, 20% phone. And if you, Phil, could keep up with it, you'd be like, great, my reply rate would stay the same. I'd just respond to more emails. But we actually hit this like capacity limit as far as like what we as readers can manage. And so we saw reply rates tank. I think the data was like just south of 40%. And so you're looking at what that does to a business. It's pretty impactful. So you got emails going up, got replies going down. We've got this tool that we came up with as like an interesting solution to that. Sellers found it and they ran with it. So we've just leaned into it. We think about what it means to write a better email. It comes down to three things. It's who are you writing to, why, what do you say, how do you say it, and how quickly can you get that point across. So it's equal parts research, writing assistant, and productivity.
Wow. That's pretty good, man. I will tell you, I expected mostly the writing assistant, right? I thought that was going to be the thing that was the most helpful, but the research and the productivity gains are certainly there, man. That's really really good, and that's three things that if we think about can certainly drive our sales more, right? We can make more sales hopefully in less time because we're sending better emails, right? Emails that don't suck certainly can help us drive revenue. So why not? Like, what? Tell me, like, if you were to say, you know what, don't buy Lavender. Like, who's Lavender not for?
It's a great question because when we first built it, it was very general purpose. So we built it with like this idea of it's basically the opposite of what you want as a founder. You've got a really cool product and we don't know who it's for. So like we tested the waters with everyone from like job seekers, recruiters, marketers, customer success, and obviously sales, which is where we ended up landing. The answer to that is like it's kind of hard for me to say because of the way we started, we've since like boiled the product down and made it much more helpful for the sales rep, particularly the SDR and the AE roles. So that's who I would tell to use it. Why they shouldn't use it, that's a great question.
Well, I would say if I was going to answer that for you, Will, I would say if you want to keep sending the same message over and over and over again, Lavender's probably not your jam, right? So you should find ways to use that to write better emails, not just to send the same schlock. It's not meant to be, not meant to be a lather, rinse, and repeat. It's more meant to be a learn, get better, which gets back to your first point that we have to learn before we earn. And I think your product helps us do that, Will.
Well, man, I should have you sell on our behalf.
We'll have to talk about that, Will. But I think, truly, man, there's a lot there that can help people, whether you're, an individual consultant, whether you're an SDR or you're an AE, whatever it is that you're doing. If you're in sales, you should absolutely check out Lavender. Will is not giving me a commission for any of this, but I do encourage you, friends, if you're listening, right, go to trylavender.com, check that out, and get his free guide. Hope this guide finds you well because it's helpful. You'll write better sales emails and you'll stop writing emails that suck. So, Will, any last thoughts here if folks want to get started writing better emails? What's your like one thing that they should be doing?
I'll add to the list to hit me up, and I will happily drop my Calendly for them, and they can book some time with me to talk about their emails. I happily do that all the time. I've had hundreds of one-on-ones with sales reps, managers, etc., to talk about what it takes to write a better email. But the number one piece of advice that I would give to folks is, follow the golden rule. Don't hit send on an email that you yourself wouldn't want to read.
There you go. Don't hit send on an email you wouldn't want to read. That's great. And friends, if you're listening, you want to talk to Will, connect with him on LinkedIn. Real easy, linkedin.com/in/William Allred. And go to trygetlavender.com. Check out the tool. It's fantastic. Will, thanks so much for investing some time in me today. I learned a lot, and I know everybody listening and watching learned a lot too. So thanks, man.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Phil.
My pleasure. Thank you. And